Good morning, or depending on when you're watching this, good afternoon, good evening, or good night. My name's Ross, and as always, told out of Oyster Radio. So today, we need to take a look at a weird but rather important ruling, which has come down from the Pokémon Company. It's actually an errata to a card that has not yet actually been released. Yep, that new Garchomp from Brilliant Stars. We haven't even seen an English scan of it yet. And we've already gone and seen an errata coming down, which quite frankly, ladies and gentlemen, is a little bit strange and a little bit surprising. But essentially what's gone and happened was that Pokemon have gone and printed the ability doing the wrong thing, and it could lead to some issues in the future. So if we take a look at Garchomp, and I'm afraid I have to use a Japanese scan here because we actually don't have an English scan yet. Lovely artwork, incidentally. Garchomp's ability was supposed to say, when you play this Pokemon from your hand to evolve one of your Pokemon during your turn, you may prevent all damage from an effective attacks from your opponent's Pokemon done to this Pokemon until the end of your opponent's next turn. Basically, it gets immunity from your opponent's attacks until the end of your next turn. And bearing in mind this happens when you're on the bench or in the active, so against really good bench hitting decks like Jolteon for instance, or decks like Rapid Strike Urshifu that can hit the bench with a decent amount of power, you essentially get protection. You get to make sure that those attacks that would do a rather large amount of damage and potentially get a KO on you don't. That's rather lovely. But that's not what they actually wrote on the card. What they actually wrote was this. When you play this Pokemon from your hand to evolve one of your Pokemon during your turn, you may prevent all damage from and effective attacks done to this Pokemon until the end of your opponent's next turn. What's the difference? The difference is it doesn't say from your opponent's Pokemon, and therefore the wording of the ability gives you protection against your own attacks. Any attacks that would damage yourself, damage your bench, absolutely don't here, and that's a pretty big difference. Now, as always, we can sit here and debate how much of an issue it's going to be in the current metagame as it stands at the moment, but this is substantially different. Now, of course, had we seen the English scan, I like to think, there's no way I can ever know this for certain, but I'd like to think that if I'd seen the English text, I would notice. Because it's the same ability as we saw on the Lucario from Burning Shadows, reprinted as a promo card, which says, when you evolve this Pokemon from your hand during your turn, you may prevent all effects of your opponent's attacks, including damage, done to this Pokemon until the end of your opponent's next turn. So Lucario really specifically was just your opponent. I can't tell you if I would have noticed this or not. I never got a chance to see the card, quite frankly. But I'd like to think I would have done. And feel free to not believe me on that one. It doesn't really matter. That's largely irrelevant. Of course, if we want to go for all-time biggest mistranslations or mistypings of abilities, call it what you will, if you want to go for the all-time record, you've got to go back to Slowking. Slowking from Neo Genesis was mistranslated in a way that full-on proper job broke the game. Now, Slowking's ability over in Japan basically said that when your opponent plays a trainer card and Slowking is active, you may flip a coin, and if heads, the card does nothing and put it on top of your opponent's deck. As a really important side note, back when Slowking came out in Neo Genesis, which was, Gen 2 in the TCG, everything was trainer cards. There was no such thing as supporters and stadiums or anything like that. Trainer meant all of them as just one big group. So whenever your opponent tried to do anything like that, you flipped a coin. The problem was, when it was translated into English, they forgot to write, or mistranslated, call it what you will, and Slowking is active, or while Slowking is your active Pokemon, or whatever the phrasing was going to be. And what that meant was that Slowking actually worked on the bench. Which meant that rather than having to have Slowking active, and honestly the attack on Slowking isn't particularly good, it wasn't a big deal, It didn't see a huge amount of play in Japan, and it therefore being limited to one, because you could only have one active Slowking, you could have a Pokemon you actually wanted to attack with active, and you could have up to 4 Slowking on the bench, so your opponent would literally have to watch you flip 4 coins and hope they all came up as tails in order to actually get a trainer card through. That is somewhere in the region of a 1 in 16 chance. So 1 out of every 16 trainer cards they played would actually work. Ruined the game, broke the game, got banned. This is not on the level of Slowking, alright? It's a fun little story because it's a mistranslated, mistyped, call it what you will ability, which has gone and impacted the game a little bit, which is rather lovely. Well, interesting. I think lovely is the right word, but certainly interesting. But let's be perfectly clear, ladies and gentlemen, this is not the same thing as Slowking. Well, I suppose it is in the way that it came around, but it is very much not in terms of how much impact it's going to have. Because, of course, the question that we've got is, how relevant is it nowadays to actually hit your own bench? How many Pokemon out there are hitting your own bench, and how many of them out there would be able to use Garchomp and get a huge amount of protection? And at the moment, and please correct me in the comment section if I'm wrong about this, I can't see any broken combos. One of the things that comes to mind here is using a card like Giratina, and I'm not saying that, Giratina's legal now, I know it's not, and I'm not saying there's a card exactly like it that's doing the rounds right now, I'm using it as an example. Because remember, these things aren't just for now, they're for any cards that might be released in the future. But that Giratina's got an attack that lets you do 130, but place 4 damage counters on one of your Pokemon. Well, that is an effect of your own attack. It's not damage, but placing damage counters is an effect of an attack. So what you would essentially be able to do is choose Garchomp to take the damage counters, and then the damage counters would fail and you'd be fine. You choose Garchomp as a target, but then the ability pops in and gives it immunity. So you would essentially be able to use something like Giratina's attack, and you wouldn't really have any kind of downside there at all, which is clearly a very, very relevant thing indeed. Now, of course, it's worth asking at this stage, well, hang on a second, was this an issue in Japan? If you've been following this channel, you'll know it's not been an issue in Japan. If it was, I'd have made a video about it. The translation we had from the lovely Antoine Boulet, who's pretty gosh darn good at this stuff, did tell us clearly that it was only your opponent's attacks. So this isn't a case of a card being designed wrong or a mistake in the design. It's just a case of it's been mistranslated or mistyped. And I know this is one of those situations where we might want to start all getting on our high horse and saying about quality control and this is terrible, and we all make mistakes, right? I made mistakes in my job. You've made mistakes in your job. I mean, goodness, my job at the moment is this, and we all know I've made plenty of mistakes in my videos. I was looking back through the last few months of videos this morning, seeing what I'd done, what videos were doing well, trying to get ideas. I've had a typo in a title from a video 2 months ago that I apparently haven't noticed, and this is not the first time I've flicked through my videos in the past couple of months. Somehow I'd left a typo there completely unchanged in the past 2 months. This happens, ladies and gentlemen. It happens. And the reality is, it's never been a problem and it's never going to be a problem. The pre-releases for Brilliant Stars start this weekend. We're only on Wednesday. So the pre-releases haven't even started yet. The set itself is not actually out until February the 25th, and it's not legal for a couple of weeks after that. My point is, there is absolutely no way whatsoever anybody is being disadvantaged by this because they've gone and fixed it. Simple as that. Now, of course, the question becomes, are they ever going to do any prints with the corrected text? And the answer is, I don't really know. Because at this point, we know, whatever is out there Brilliant Stars-wise, it's been printed for weeks, right? Brilliant Stars is printed. Now, there'll probably be more print runs in the future. The question is whether they actually correct it. Because I showed you the other day about that Chandelure with the tiny, tiny little whoopsie on the artwork. And the fact that actually nowadays, in a weird thing, Pokemon have actually gone and done a new print run of the set in Japan, where they've actually gone and fixed it. which is something I wasn't necessarily expecting. Whereas we could look at something like Cinderace, which was printed with the wrong retreat cost, and that never got fixed. At least as far as I'm aware, please correct me in the comment section if I'm wrong about this, but Cinderace was printed with the wrong retreat cost. It was printed with a retreat cost that it didn't have over in Japan, and it never actually went and got fixed. The Japanese version of Cinderace has a retreat cost of 2. Our version of Cinderace was supposed to have a retreat cost of 2. It got printed with a retreat cost of 1. An official errata was issued, but we never actually got a new printing of Cinderace with the correct retreat cost. There is an issue, potentially, in that people might be playing in tournaments and not know about the errata, and they might run into issues there where they are playing it incorrectly, but that is essentially for players and judges to be aware of. If you're playing competitive Pokemon, this is the kind of thing you should know about, and hopefully videos like this will help people. And just at the quick side note before we finish, yes, this is technically an error card. The text was printed incorrectly, and an official errata had to be issued. This Garchomp will be an ordinary everyday run-of-the-mill holo card in the set, and it will attract the value of an ordinary everyday run-of-the-mill holo card from the set. This is not some super valuable error card. When the Cinderace came out, when the errata came down, a whole bunch of people were trying to sell this card for like a tenner because it was an error card. And technically it is because it had the wrong retreat cost, but there's no corrected version and it doesn't actually get any more value. If a corrected version is issued down the line, that's the kind of thing that's going to attract more value. There we go. So there has been an official errata issued. Make sure you're aware of it. Garchomp's ability still gives you that protection when you evolve, but only from your opponent's attacks and effects thereof, not from your own. Now you know, ladies and gentlemen, and we can all get on and continue being super excited about Brilliant Stars, because I have made absolutely no secret of the fact that I am super excited for Brilliant Stars. Roll on Saturday, I'm getting my pre-release. For now, ladies and gentlemen, I want to know what you think about this. I want to know how excited you are for Garchomp. I want to know, quite frankly, anything you want to tell me. So go nuts in the comment section, would you? But be nice! And then make sure you like this video, subscribe to this channel, follow me on Twitter at TheWasi, and Twitch for some live action at twitch.tv/PTCG Radio. If you want to support the channel, get some bonus podcasts and all that good stuff, head on over to patreon.com/PTCG Radio, where you can do exactly that. But by far the most important thing, as always, look after yourselves till next time, would ya? Thank you very much for watching. My name's Ross, and you've been watching PTCG Radio.